Hey, Steve Minotti here doing the junkyard crawl at Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts with a 1976 Chevy El Camino. Now in 1976, a lot of things were happening. The American Bicentennial, 1776 to 1976, 200 years for this great nation. I was 12 years old and I remember very clearly when cars like this were on the road. Now the OPEC oil crisis, the energy crisis of 72, 73, 74 was becoming a memory, but big cars like this, their days were numbered. In fact, 1977, the year after this, was the final year for the big El Camino. In fact, the big Chevelles and Malibus, they were downsized in 78. So the writing was on the wall, but for one of the last hurrahs, here is a full-sized El Camino. Now, a lot of people remember the El Camino was launched in 1959 as an answer to Ford's Ranchero, but we have to remember that in Australia, all the way back to the 30s, they had a thing called a ute, which was essentially a passenger car front half and a little pickup truck on the back. So utes were very popular in Australia long before we got them here. But this is a look here at the front of a standard El Camino. This is 77, so the final year for the big one, but very similar to what we're looking at here in this 1976. Although 76 was the first year for square headlights, but only on the Classic and the Super Sport. On the top you can see right there, that is the Classic with the quad lamp stacked up. First seen in 76, and of course the SS, the red one. But down at the bottom, the basic El Camino still had round headlights, and that went into 77 as well. And we can see here all the brag points and how the big bed on the back of these things. And new for 1977 was the 305, this puny little V8. In fact, well, 76 you could actually get that. It was the first year for the 305. And again, big bed. But all these things had the Superlift air shocks, the goofy shock absorbers, speaking of which, behind the bumpers, which were the 5 mile/hour mandate. But around the front of this thing, this has been completely scavenged, harvested, if you will. And we have the mean scene stealer right here. In fact, I bet you're the one who ate the front clip from this truck, aren't you? You silly little creature, you. I love you. But anyway, the whole front is gone. The frame is gone. But again, this one had air conditioning, $527. Well spent if you like to keep cool in the summertime. But check it out. The air conditioning was twice the price of the Super Sport. You could get an El Camino SS for about half the price of the AC, like $260. But with that said, the front of this is gone. We can't tell what engine this thing had originally. The VIN is long gone, but more than likely a V8, either a 305 or perhaps a 350. The 400 was in its final year in 1976, so maybe a 400 engine, not sure. No 454s after 75, so no big block for sure on this one. But we look inside of this one here, and it has the bench seat. Could have had buckets and a center console in Super Sport land. But if we look at the speedometer in this one, we'll see it goes to 100 miles per hour, the beginning of the slow down and live, drive 55, survive. But also we see the metric nomenclature underneath those English or standard numbers. The metric system was coming, and the word was it was going to replace the standard system. In fact, from 75 through 87, the Commerce Department, or Commerce Office had the metric office, believe it or not, to enforce the metric thing. And I remember as a kid seeing 55 kilometer per hour and these weird kilometer and mile per hour things, and gas being sold by the liter. And to be honest with you, it came and went. 1987, the metric department was disbanded and the effort was reduced. You know, they were afraid that America would become an island in a metric ocean, the world being divisible by 10, whereas we still have the foot, the inch, the yard, all that kind of crazy stuff. But the metric system is with us, but kind of hiding in plain sight. To me, the only metric I care about is Emily Haines' band, Metric. A bunch of great albums right there. In fact, if you go to ilovemetric.com, you're not going to learn about the metric system, but rather about some great Canadian rock and roll. But getting back to the El Camino, this is a collectible automobile, February of 2003, with many stories, but inside the 59 through 60 El Camino. And you got to remember, again, Ford led the way. Or did they? Right here in the early 50s, Chevrolet was toying with this little illustration of a possible early 50s General Motors, a Chevrolet pickup truck. And that's not a Ute. That's actually a GM car that was considered, but never did happen. But of course, 59, we got it. There it is, the Batwing El Camino, possible with a fuel-injected 283. Yup. Even a 348 triple carbureted big block was certainly possible in the El Camino. And here's some prototypes and steps along the way that happily never made it. Look at the stacked headlights on that freak on the right-hand left-hand side. I mean, what were they thinking? But all the same, a classic design right there. But again, you got to remember that Ford was first in this country with a little thing called the Ranchero. We make our way around the side of this one here. Let's go around the tree rather than through it. But on this one here, what we won't see is the Superlift air shock behind the fuel filler door. Rather, on these things, it was located behind the gas tank filler, which is long gone down there. But the beauty of the El Camino really is the load bed right here. You can put plenty of cargo in here, up to 800 pounds. The only crazy thing is that if you put a full load in this thing, you had to stop at a gas station and fill up the Superlift shocks, or these things would drag their tails pretty badly. And of course, you take the load out, it'll sit high and goofy in the back. So you with a computer with the active suspension. With that said, it was better than nothing. But getting back to Australia and Utes, a lot of people don't realize this is Australian muscle car of 2007. If you're not aware, Australia, if you watch the movie Mad Max, all that kind of stuff, you'll see a small taste of all the stuff, these Falcons, HOs and stuff, very cool stuff. But until recently, in fact, even now, they still make Utes in Australia. But look at this on the left-hand side. This is General Motors, the Holden division. These Utes, still very much modern looking things. Some of these had LS V8s. Ford had an inline turbo 6. Even the 4.6 liter dual overhead cam Ford was used in the Ford version of the Ute. You might say, where's Chrysler in all this stuff? Well, Chrysler did make some Utes, but it was a long time ago. They were based on the Valiant. And this is a fantastic book right here by Elizabeth Tuckey and Ewan Kennedy on Chrysler's Valiant in Australia. And looks similar to our Valiants, but not so much. Kind of different, kind of the same, but actually quite different. Right-hand drive being a key thing. But yeah, there was a Valiant Ute, and here it is here on the right, the Wayfarer. Look at that. It's a Plymouth Valiant from the front, but it's a pickup truck at the back. So yeah, Chrysler played along in the Ute game, although not as long as GM and Ford of Australia did. And of course, there were some Japanese Utes being sold and built in Australia. We don't get them here. But with that said, the Ute is alive and well in other parts of the world. Not so much here. There was a brief period, I was at Hot Rod Magazine from 1998 through 2004, and there were a couple of moments where GM said, hey, we're bringing back the Ute. They showed us some El Camino prototypes, these goofy things. They were kind of cool, brought on Power Tour, but it never made production. So if you ask me, I think the Ute's probably an idea that has come and gone, replaced by the crossover and full-sized SUVs and pickups and stuff like that. But they were cool while they lasted, and not just in America. A lot of them were down under. Now, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up, give us a like, share it with your friends, etc. And hit the bell so you know when the next video comes out tomorrow morning.